And joining us now is Jessie Rossman, legal director for the ACLU of Massachusetts. She has recently joined Ozturk's legal team and has spoken with her since her detainment by authorities. Jessie, thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. I mean, we understand your client is currently being held at a detention facility in the state of Louisiana. Talk to us about, as much as you can, about the conversations you've had with her recently. How is she doing? How does she say the conditions are there in Louisiana?
Members of our legal team were able to speak with her today, and she's scared. Her future is uncertain. She is someone who cares deeply about her education and is very concerned about being able to finish her doctoral degree. But I would say at the same time, she's also really concerned about what this means for other students, because she knows that if this is happening to her, it can happen to anyone. I think the last thing she's really raised up that is important for folks to know is she's also incredibly grateful for the outpouring of support, both here in her home state of Massachusetts, but also throughout the country, where we've seen people speaking up, standing up, and saying that what's happened is wrong.
And we saw today the court in Massachusetts issuing its ruling, essentially saying she cannot be deported until jurisdiction is more clearly determined. Walk us through your initial reaction to that court ruling. Do you feel like you and your team are in a good position to address this legally moving forward, or what do you want to see happen next?
Yes, I mean, look, this was a really important next step. Early this morning, the legal team filed an amended petition with the court, and we're ultimately asking the court to send Rumessia back to Massachusetts immediately and to release her from custody. And just about an hour or so ago, we received a court ruling where the court has issued an order ensuring that she cannot be removed from the U.S. until there's a further court order, and also ordering the government to respond to our amended petition by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And as I said, this is a really critical next step, and her legal team, we're all going to continue fighting so that we can bring her back home.
Let's go back to that video of her being taken into custody. On the streets, sort of a suburban setting, you see these plainclothes officers walk up to her. It sounds like, from what we've been able to hear on the video, she at some point is asking, like, what is happening? They say, we're police. But I'm curious, from your perspective and with your legal team, is that snippet of the video that the public has seen the totality of how she was detained? Has she told you or the rest of the legal team anything different that she remembers happening in those initial moments of being taken into custody?
I mean, I think the images from that video are startling and clear. You know, she was coming home. She was about to be breaking her fast with her friends, and she wasn't able to do so because a man in a hooded shirt, plain clothes, approached her. She was quickly encircled by many other officers who soon pulled up masks to cover their faces. Her bag was removed. She was handcuffed, and she was marched to an unmarked car. And for over 20 hours from that standpoint, her family, her friends, and even her legal counsel didn't know where she was. And if this can happen on the streets of Somerville, it can happen anywhere in this country, and that is unacceptable. We need to say that this is wrong and can't happen here.
I want to ask you about what we have heard from DHS thus far, because a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security has told NBC News that Ozturk was detained because she, quote, engaged in activities in support of Hamas, further saying that glorifying and supporting terrorists who kill Americans is ground for visa issuance to be terminated. I want to ask you a series of questions related to that context for you to respond to. Has your client ever provided any sort of material support to Hamas?
Look, it is abundantly clear that by all accounts, it appears as though the sole basis for Rumessia's detention and arrest and targeting was a single op-ed that she co-authored with 3 other students in her student newspaper, the Tufts Daily, approximately a year ago. This is designed to be targeting her speech, to chill her speech, to punish her for her speech, and also to chill the speech of anyone else who's watching. That violates her First Amendment rights.
So that would be that March 2024 op-ed where she'd argued that the university should engage with a student-led push to divest from the state of Israel. That's the extent most of what we had seen so far. We understand her friends have told people publicly that she'd never been involved really in any sort of significant protest on campus. But just to sort of put a fine point on it, to your knowledge, has she ever advocated for anyone who is associated with Hamas or advocated for Hamas specifically in any way?
No, I mean, everything that we are seeing, and I think the best indication of this, you can even look at Secretary Rubio's statements yesterday when he was asked point blank by a reporter on the record about Rumesia's case. They referenced the op-ed. They asked about the basis for the government's behavior towards her. And Secretary Rubio didn't reference anything about Rumesia except for that solitary op-ed. This is clearly designed to punish her speech and target her speech in a way that violates the First Amendment and her constitutional rights under the Fifth Amendment to due process.
Okay. So just to be clear, to your knowledge, can you say just definitively yes or no whether or not she has advocated for Hamas in any sort of fashion since having a student visa and being in the United States?
There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever.
Okay. According to U.S. law, and we can put some of this up on screen for viewers to see as well, an alien whose presence or activities in the U.S. The Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. It seems like the law, when it comes to visas and whether or not what grounds need to be met in order for them to be revoked, it seems like it's pretty subjective and the bar is low and it seems fairly broad. Is that a fair reading of the law here? I mean, do U.S. authorities really have this much of a leash, if you will, to terminate visas?
I mean, I think we need to look at the behavior that we're talking about here, where Rumesia was targeted, arrested, detained, and sent over 1,000 miles away to be held in Louisiana. And there's absolutely no basis for that detention. There have been no charges that was brought against Rumesia. There's no allegation that she's a flight risk. There's no allegation that she's a danger to anyone. Her detention has no legal basis, and it violates her rights.
What is the next step for you and your team after that Tuesday, which I think is April 1st, 5 p.m. deadline for the court order for the government to respond? What are your next steps legally from there?
We're going to be doing everything that we can to ensure that we can bring Rumesia back to our community here in Somerville and to get her released from custody. We'll, of course, review the government's papers as soon as they are filed, but we're going to keep fighting to bring her home and to get her released.
All right. Jesse Rossman with the ACLU of Massachusetts. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.